Yakamaya Mayaka Yameya. Yakamaya Mayaka Yameya. Yakamaya Mayaka Yameya. Yakamaya Mayaka Yameya.
Okay, hope you didn't mind that very amateurish introduction. I mean, I would love top of the line production value, but there is a little sample of the vibe, the sort of epic vibe that went into this book that I wrote, Bloodline, right? And if you close your eyes and listen to the music, I'll be playing you some additional music as well. You get the what's the word? You get the can't think of the word. I don't know. It's like the primeval psychology that I'm sort of going for. It's sort of it's trying to go to the very core of what it means to be a human being, and the very core of our humanity. And so I was trying to tell a story about us, about a human story on the most epic scale that I could think of. And so everything is turned up. There's quite a high degree of sexuality. There's quite a high degree of dead bodies. Lots of people die. It's extremely cold. There's also fire. So there's fire and ice. The stakes are extremely high. It's the future of the human race. But it's sort of being whittled down. One nation's bloodline coming to an end after another, after another, after another. And so I was really trying to tell an incredibly epic story, but with the what do you call it? The central message being life goes on after the end of the world. And that was a very important thing for me to know when I was a teenager, given what I was about to go through. But it's also a very important thing in true crime. If you think about Idaho, life goes on after the end of the world. Tragedies happen. As horrible as they are, as impossible as they are, as unfathomable as they are, life does go on. Life does actually have to go on. So yeah, so that's a story that I poured a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into. It took about 2 years to write. Not only when I first conceived it, but even when I wrote it later on, it took a really long time to write. And then I compiled a lot of material in order to both imagine the story and then also to market the story. And so you've seen some of that here. You've seen some of the what do they call it? Not story art, concept art. Not sure why I'm not quite in the zone to think about things, to express things, but concept art, storyboards, all that kind of thing. And what I wanted was the sort of anachronistic situation where you have this combination of the very, very modern, like spaceships and drones and advanced technology, and then also the extremely sort of primordial situation of like an ice age and the stark elements. And within all of this, within this mythos, is the very important symbol, which is the wolf. And I think what the wolf symbolizes is man's appetite to be a man. Man, when I say man, I mean human beings, right? The appetite for a person to be fully realized. So, you know, the wolf inside of you is someone with incredible agency, someone who's both, you know, like it's embracing the animal quality that you are, but also embracing some other quality that connects you to the earth and connects you to your fellow creatures. And in a weird way, wolves have got supremacy over this world in their environment, so they tend to be the apex predator. And so in a way, the wolf is meant to bring human beings back into a connectedness with the world, not only the physical world, you know, the mountains and the sea and the sky, but also man and his fellow creatures. And so this story is about becoming human again, I guess, at the end of the day, but again on a very, very epic scale. And it's how you become human in the face of losing literally everything. So what you see on the screen right there is the rear end of a jet. And so I was trying to conceive what do these machines look like in drones and rockets. And there's also a lot of rockets in the story, to kind of like Thor meets Interstellar, I guess, in a way. And so I do kind of study all sorts of different things. Very ancient history, swords, the attire people wore in ice, but long time ago. What did the Red Indians wear? And then also extremely advanced technology, some of which doesn't exist, spaceships, drones, and all that kind of thing. And so that's why there was a bit of a study of this sort of thing. And then I also had to come up with the sigil for the House of Light, which is the wolf. And so I was looking at that, and then also looking at just ancient Celtic symbols, because people have regressed to some extent into a medieval mindset. So sort of looking at that. So, you know, if you are looking at some of these executions and thinking that's not really very good, well, I felt the same way. I mean, I was hiring people on Fiverr, and you know, obviously I would have preferred the best artists that you can get hold of. And I really was frustrated by the level of work I was getting back, and spent a certain amount of money and then basically just gave up on it. And I've been thinking, is now a good time to have those conversations again? Is now a good time to spend more money on better artwork, kind of thing? Because in the same way that George Lucas needed concept art to try and convey a very complex mythology that no one had ever seen before, I kind of need to do the same thing. So one thing that you say, space swords, swords and spaceships. Yeah, but what are you actually talking about? And then the art kind of gives that impression, and to some extent the music. So what you see in this image, I'm going to read a chapter in a moment, but what you see in this image is, if you look at what you see over there, is you're actually seeing something that is dramatized in, I think it's chapter 3, where someone appears and they're surrounded by wolves, not drawn very well. But above them is either a drone or a spaceship, right? And so you have this combination of bows and arrows and spaceships. And you might say that's nothing new. We see that in Avatar. Actually, I came up with this in 1989. So I was dreaming up these ideas long time ago. And anyway, the situation that they're in at the moment is the Earth is dying, right? The Earth is, it's 200 years into the future. The Earth is dying. And it's a situation where they are desperately trying to seed the galaxy with humanity in an effort to keep the human race going. And so they send thousands of spaceships into space to different quadrants, and with the hope that they're going to find their way somewhere in order to continue the human race. But then what happens is the AI on these spaceships turn most of them around, basically saying, sorry, there's no possible way we can survive in this part of space. We've scanned the galaxy, whatever. And then all of these spaceships kind of return. So some spaceships are leaving in search of another planet, and some are coming back. So you kind of have the situation of the Earth's dying, and meanwhile, every now and then spaceships are firing off in search of another planet, and some are coming back. So you kind of have this very dystopian, extremely dystopian context to what is going on. And meanwhile, people are living in castles again, and they're eating not food grown in crops, but animals that have got to be hunted, and the animals are getting fewer as well, besides the wolves. Stephanie says, will the artwork be included? Not quite sure what you mean. I'm a very visual person. So Mel Stiller says, I've got a beautiful painting of a wolf family in my living room. Oh, okay. It's interesting. So I'm going to play you a piece of music in a moment that I've got lots of pieces of music, but this particular piece of music really cuts to the emotional theme that I want to convey. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first read you from chapter 3. And the good news is I'm doing something like we've been doing with the Van Gogh letters. We can actually see chapter 3 here. So you guys can kind of follow with me as I'm reading. And so this is chapter 3. Let's just go to the top of the book. There you go. Bloodline, Murmurs of Earth. You can see it's got a very dystopian vibe. It's set in the past, but it feels like it's set in the future, but it feels in a way like the past. This just gives you a bit of an idea of the design of the book. There you see the basic rule of nature is that the strong live and the weak die. When he's most powerful, nothing does he become. And so, so there's quite a few pages, 126 chapters, around about 500 pages. So it's quite an epic story. Okay. Now, I haven't actually read through chapter 3, so I don't know whether there are expletives or hard to pronounce things. So if there are, sorry about that. Let's see how it goes. Stephanie says, I don't have the design in the digital copy. Yeah, the design isn't in the digital copy, but the digital copy does have the music, and the digital copy does have links to images. So that's something. Okay, so shall we get going? So when we read, when we go through this, I want you to imagine this scene. I want you to imagine, if you look carefully at the foreground here, this is the top of a castle, and it's very high above the surrounding area. And the surrounding area is, as you can see, mostly just ice. And what this is actually a wall of ice that is slowly moving. It's actually not moving that slowly. It's a wall of ice that is associated with an ice age, and this wall of ice is basically like the encroach of death, right? And this wall of ice is actually moving in on this castle, so it'll essentially bulldoze over this entire castle. But meanwhile, before it does that, they've got to fight off other people that are in the area. And so it's a very desperate time for the human race, right? But in terms of the chapter 3, I want you to think about these hooded figures with bows and arrows. It's very cold, as you can imagine, and their flags flapping in the air, and the scenario is extremely stark. It's very white. The colors are basically white and gray and black, and then human figures in that situation. And as I say, wolves, wind, cold, swords. Right, that's kind of the situation. It's a very hard but kind of spectacular setting. It's a very great struggle that they're all in at this time. And the attrition rate, like the body count, is constantly whittling down the human race, right? And so it's this question of, do I want to live and continue to suffer? Do I want to fight to survive? Yes or no? And some people die even though they want to live, and some people don't necessarily want to live. What is worth living for in a world like this, right? So that's kind of the context. So let's go to that. So, okay, chapter 3, the visitor. 52 archers and I watch my master's tall grey form sheath his sword. He bends down, picks up the girl, and carries her slowly to the yet. 2 riders rush on horseback to meet him. It looks like Hook and Hayadal. A few of these scattling wolves stop, shake their coats, and then trot again. I think I'm going to put my glasses on for this. Okay. A few of the scattering wolves stop, shake their coats, and then trot again, tails between legs, back to the hillside that spawned them. Stronzo, Stan shouts at me. So I don't have any idea what that's about. I think it's a Spanish word for something. Or it's an insult, I think. Let me just check what that is. It means turd, right? Stronzo is a vulgar word for turd. It's kind of Old English, I think. It also means a piece of shit. So that should tell you what the vibe is regarding this writer that lives in this castle. He's regarded as a piece of shit, right? And so he's in a very impolite way told, "Hey, piece of shit, go and get Kelly," right? And so this is his reaction. I flushed with fright and anger. I rushed down the tower, trying not to slip on the slick stone steps. Bosenhagen rushes past me. Then Armstrong overtakes me too, his mountain ash bow clipping my ear as he jumps by. What does Ulysses say about the bow and arrow? The bow and arrow projectile weapon system predates recorded history. And here we are again, just as Einstein said, trying to stay afloat in these nuclear wastes with little more than sticks for protection. Now, if you are getting disorientated, it's done on purpose. The idea is that you have some very, what's the word? You have some very typical classical scenes of the cold and of nature, and then you suddenly jump into the future of that particular time, and you're talking about, you're going from bows and arrows to Einstein. And so the idea is to disorientate you, to say, well, what time are we actually in at the moment? And the difficulty is disorientating the reader enough to keep their curiosity, but not too much that it confuses them. Anyway, so he goes on to say, well, a few, like Ulysses, are in possession of more cosmic technologies. When I reach the Yet with Kelly, there's a small crowd gathered around the visitor. 2 silver beetles hover in the air above the whole group. Any of you know what the Yet is? Any idea what that is? If it's a word that's unfamiliar to you, any idea what Yet means? Yvonne has beat me to it. So part of the little flourishes that indicate that you're in a new universe. You're not just on Earth. You're not on Earth 10 years ago or 10 years into the future. You're in a different universe, is these small little touches where you use words that people aren't going to recognize. And again, it's meant to disorientate you, to say, this isn't Game of Thrones. This isn't regular. This isn't a regular story. This is something different, right? It's trying to emphasize that, right? Yeah, Yvonne's already on it. Okay, so let's continue. So basically, what's just happened is a person has appeared in the distance and then trying to outrun a whole pack of wolves, and their leader, Christopher Ulysses, has run out, and there's been this spectacular shitstorm of fur and swords where one person has taken on like whatever 20, 30 wolves, and he has repelled them, right? And you might say, jeepers, I thought they are friends with the wolves, kind of thing. And the answer is, people have alliances with certain other people and animals, and they literally are relying on certain animals for certain things, and then you've got other people that have got other alliances with other people and other animals, right? So it's not to say the House of the Wolf, all the wolves are sort of pet dogs to them. They've got certain of their own wolves, and those wolves aren't friendly to other wolves. But what makes the story also quite interesting, like Star Wars, where you've got Chewbacca, you've got these animals that are, or creatures that seem to be animals that are part of the cast of characters, right? Okay. So 2 silver beetles hover in the air above the whole group. That is actually a reference to 2 small drones. So you have a castle setting, and you actually have drones that are sort of hovering in there, almost like you see in the movie Dune, right? And that again gives you the sense of, cheapers. What century are we living in? When did all of this happen? Is this on Earth, or where actually are we, right? And so I just want to, before we go further, I just want to bring to your attention this word, anachronistic, right?
Anachronistic.
And what it refers to, and you get a little bit of a sense of of this from Vincent van Gogh, that he doesn't quite belong to his time, right? So you have anachronism in art, and this story I wrote was deliberately anachronistic, right? So here it says belonging to a period other than that being portrayed, belonging or appropriate to an earlier period, especially so to seem conspicuously old-fashioned. So in other words, what I'm doing is I'm purposefully distorting reality. I'm purposefully exaggerating certain things and changing and altering certain things to challenge your place in reality, and then also to in a way set up a new reality. And the whole idea is so that you can think about reality, right? You are doing this in order to set up reality as something to think about. That's the kind of idea. So just some more about it. The placing of persons, events, objects, or customs in times where they do not belong. A person or a thing out of place in time, and especially the present time. What's a synonym for that? Out of date, antiquated. It often refers to being in the past, but it can also be in the future. Okay. Do you guys follow what I'm getting at? Okay. I'll try and read from here to the end of the chapter. Okay. Yvonne says, okay, now I know what you were referring to there. But you would have known that if you just read on, you would have known it a little bit later. Okay, so here we go. The scene is painfully bright. Dazzled spectators whisper with excitement. The visitor, she's already on everyone's lips. Visitors are unusual, but not unknown. Young girls are unheard of. Yet somehow a young girl has made her way here. What beggars belief is not only her recent good fortune, but that she has trekked alone, without snowshoes, without skis, without so much as a face mask, and most inexplicable of all, entirely unarmed. Even more bizarre, it appears that she is not from Alba. She appears to have covered some distance. This means she has survived several days and nights outside, completely exposed to the Arctic conditions. All this is astonishing, but when I see her face, the same thing hits me that has everyone else so keyed up. I catch my breath. Is she injured? Panda Bandit asked, kneeling over her. Is she a crasher? I asked. Now, what he means by that is she someone that went up in a spaceship and kind of the spaceship crashed down, crashed back down on Earth, and it's someone who's kind of come out of stasis? In other words, is it kind of an astronaut, right? And then Ulysses answers, no, she's not a crasher. Anyway, here's the explanation. A crasher is our name for crews that crash back to Earth. Often their craft contain valuable resources, warm clothes, preserved food supplies, energy cells, computers, etc. Kelly places his hand at her throat. Ulysses opens up a huge fur coat to check for bites. One of the hovering beetles drifts down. A film of blue plasma washes out over vibrating metal. The beetle turns and hovers in front of the elf's face. Now, before we go any further, that whole thing of a film of blue plasma, you've seen that. You've seen that over here, right? It's when these drones scan. You see that. You see like kind of a blue plasma coming out of them. Let's just see if I can find what I'm looking for. It's that kind of thing, right? So you've got wolves and snow and swords and a castle and then you've got this blue plasma in the middle of it. That is trying to really emphasize this anachronistic situation, right? It's almost like you in the future, but the past is sort of part of it, right? And that's kind of one of the conversations I want to have is how much should the past be part of the present? Is the past ever really past? Does the future, does the techno-triumphalism of the future really take us out of the present or the past? Can it really save us, right? You can see in this image those I'm not actually sure what they're called. I used to know, but those things that direct the jets, basically, that direct the. I'm just trying to. I used to know this so well. Anyway, there I'm trying to figure out how a drone like this, which is quite a big vehicle, can stay vertical, and that's why I was studying jet engines and things like that. Yeah, it is mixed worlds. Mel Stiller, Alba does mean white, but it was the original name for Scotland. So Scotland, once upon a time, was called Alba, and this story is actually set in Scotland. Okay. Let me just see if I can, because I'm a little bit frustrated that I'm not thinking, so I'm a little bit sleepy, but jet engines. Yeah. Just trying to see what they actually called. It's not thrust reversal. It's really the name for these things that you get on rockets and on airplanes. It's got a specific name. It's not quite what I'm looking for. There's quite a good image of it. That one there. Not quite sure what they're called. Engine bay panels. Is that? I'm not sure if that's what it's called. Anyway, I can't think of it. It's got quite a cool name, but I can't think of it at the moment. Anyway, you can see what I'm talking about, but it's these things. So that is what I was trying to get the artist to execute in that. So they sort of pointed downwards like that, right? Okay, so let's continue. So the beetle turns and hovers in front of the elf's face. So I don't call it a drone, although that is what it is, a small little drone. A tinny voice carrying the unmistakable inflections and gravitas of Mr. Darcy's voice buzzes. Facial scans, beep, shows she's German. Beep. So they've actually got facial recognition, but on almost like a genetic level. She's from Ladbergen, the elf murmurs. So that's the kind of level of information they have. They can scan someone's face and tell exactly, well, in this, don't tell me how they knew this, but they did. Anyway, when he mentions her neighborhood, her lashes flick open. She's very striking. Scans show no hemorrhaging. Beep. Heart rate, beep, is dangerously high. Beep. So it's kind of when you have some transmissions, there are like electronic beeps interspersed in it. for whatever reason. I don't know why this is happening, but that is happening. Then he says, how high is her heartbeat? And then he says, almost 200. That is a pretty damn high heartbeat. Ulysses leans over and begins to speak softly right against her ear in the same foreign tongue he used earlier. Now, bear in mind, she's just tried to outrun a pack of wolves, and she's now regaining consciousness. You can imagine she's pretty frightened. She blinks quickly. When she answers, he turns his silver ear slightly to her lips. Whatever you're doing, it's working. I know your face. We only see faces that we already know in our dreams, he answers in English. She blinks more slowly. Is this real? I hear her say in English. He places his hand on her forehead. Her eyelashes flicker and she passes out. That's it. She's down to 120 and falling. She's fine. She'll be all right. She's just exhausted, the doctor says. Ulysses picks her up, his eyes fix on me. She's going to need rest, Richard. Will you look after her? Ulysses, carrying her, brushes by me before I can answer. He's heading towards my room. The beetles follow us along a corridor, small silver pricks of energy at the center of a bubble of blue light. Both chirp, and as we reach our destination, they quickly depart. Two soft blue light balloons disappearing down a staircase that leads to the vault and the array. Then about 50 of my clansmen and I follow the elf into my room. Ulysses places her on the bed. Seeing as my hearth is just ash, and I've no wood stores, Jasper, a jelly with a long white face like a badger, is dispatched to fetch firewood. As he rushes for the door, I catch his shoulder and say, if you see Udak, send him to me, okay? Fuck off, Stronzo. I don't take orders from you, only him and the riders. You can see that the scrivener, the guy who's writing this record, the soldiers don't really like him. And yet he's got this strange relationship with the leader of the place. The leader gives him this responsibility, but the soldiers don't like him. What's going on with that? Then he says, I glance around and I see a few faces frowning at me. A few more people file into the room. Bosenhagen receives a mug from Sarah, the kitchen maid, and hands it to Ulysses, but she's still unconscious. He summons me and hands the cup to me. I glance at the ghost steaming from the hot surface. I smell the honey and feel thirst rising up in my throat. And so what that is meant to convey is he is literally hungry and thirsty. He's not just someone who lives in this castle. He's constantly hungry and thirsty. And so this, cup of tea is brought from somewhere, and he immediately smells it, and he's like, oh, I would love to just have a little sip of that. I'm so thirsty. I would love a warm drink, right? And that just conveys the terrible adversity that they're living under. I have to resist the urge to drink it myself. I glance down at her delicate white hands. I notice his long, pale fingers tracing the whorls on her fingertips. A hushed silence falls over the room. Who is she? Bosenhagen asks eventually. His words echo. And you might think that that's silly, but that is asked to address that question. So it seems like a very ordinary, innocent line in a book. But the who is she is meant to address a larger question, which is who are we? Who are you? Who am I? Who is a person? And it's trying to deal with this existential question within the context of existence being wiped out, within this context of survival under threat. Who are you? Does it matter who you are? Does it matter? Does anything matter? Does who you are matter in the scheme of things? And if not, do you need to find some meaning to that question, right? Okay. Ulysses stands, he adjusts the sword at his belt. Her name is Dagmar, he says, glancing down at her. She's come a long way, a long, long way. Like the rest of us, Bandit growls. Come, let's give her some time to rest. At the door, Ulysses stops. Richard, he says, you're speaking to Rata, aren't you? Yes, my lord, I say, but drinking more than speaking. So he's obviously saying that kind of as an internal monologue. Are you writing down his story? I look at my fingers. They are bruised and bloodied from so much handwriting. Good. There isn't much time. Once you're done, we'll need to write down her story too, all of it. And so Rata, you're going to find out, is the last person of his entire race in the world. And so Ulysses has said, I need you to write down this guy's story, what he remembers of his people, right? And then him saying to the scrivener, I actually need you to write down her story too. Why? Because she's the last of her people as well. She's German. She's the last German human being in the world. And if that doesn't give you, if that doesn't give you a sense of pause, just that idea that we're dealing with a very, very serious situation, that the entire story of entire cultures is coming to an end. And then that culture comes to an end, and then that one comes to an end. What do you do as the spectator to that story? What do you do different, given that this is what is happening, right? So again, why this is happening is its own story, but it's also, I'm trying to turn up the volume on the questions that I'm trying to ask as loudly and as to the maximum level that I can, to say, maybe you need to start thinking about being alive in the context that there's death. Maybe you need to think about that, right? And if you do think about that, what do you think about that, right? Okay. Then he says, her story. I glanced from his sharp grey eyes to the dark interior of my room where she sleeps. Why, my lord? Because, like Rata, she's the last of her race. Yes, sire. And so that's the cliffhanger at which chapter 3 ends. It's supposed to hit you like a punch to the gut, right? And you should be asking all sorts of questions at this point. You should be asking, how the hell does he know this? How the hell does the guy that they called the elf, Ulysses, how does he know that this was the last person of this particular group? How does he know? How on earth does he know this? How does he know and somebody else doesn't know? What the hell is going on here, right? So that is supposed to be pretty disquieting. But you're also supposed to get a sense of there's something supernatural about some of the people in the story. Some of them are very ordinary. Some of them are very weak and pathetic. And some of them are incredible. And that's also true of the human story, right? Okay, so are you guys ready to listen to that music that I said is so representative of the story that I want to tell? You guys ready to listen to that? Just want to see if I can find a good background for that. Okay. Okay, so what I want you to do, if you can either do this on replay or you can do it while we're doing this, but I want you to look at the image that's on screen. But when the music plays, I want you to close your eyes. Okay. And the name I've given to this piece of music is Dagmar's Kiss. So it's a scene in the narrative where so obviously the hero and Dagmar sort of fall in love, or they become like a couple. And then there's this very powerful and profoundly sad moment where he's been protecting her all along. She's like the only girl in in the area. There are some sort of maids around here and there, but there are very few women in this world, and that's also a reason why the world is dying, right? There are a lot of soldiers, but there are very few women, and this young girl kind of represents the life of Earth, and she's very fragile and she's very vulnerable. And then Ulysses has got to leave. He doesn't want to leave, but he has to leave. And so in the dark, he gets up, and he doesn't want to get up. It's cold, but he gets up, and he prepares to saddle his horse and to go on a journey. And he doesn't want to leave this young girl. She's probably like 19, 20 years old, because leaving her means that he can't protect her, and she doesn't want him to leave either. But he knows he must leave, and she knows he must leave as well. And so there's a scene again. Now you must bear in mind, I'm trying to turn the dials up on everything, on people who love each other parting from each other. It's not just a kiss on the cheek goodbye. I'm trying to turn up the dial to maximum. So how can you do that? And so I set the scene like in a courtyard. It's almost completely dark, and the only sound is him saddling his horse, and she's standing sort of nearby, and he's tying the leather of the saddle, and is preparing the horse for their trip. And then at one point he gets onto the horse. By now a little bit of light is coming through. The sun has just come up, and instead of kissing her on her mouth, she exposes her breast, almost as if to say, I realize you need a bit of a boost for what you were about to do. She exposes her breast, and he kind of kisses her breast, and it's in this very, very cold air. So to do that is also kind of dangerous and kind of whatever. And then, but it's also extremely sexual. And then next thing, the horse charges out of the castle, and that is how they part from one another. But as I say, it's done purposefully to trigger your senses, right? And so this is the music that is associated not only with that scene, but also with this entire narrative. And if it feels heartbreaking, if it feels sad, if it feels cold, if it feels like it's building to something, all of that's done on purpose. So let's see if I can find it for you. You might want to come back to this, and you might want to come back to this and listen to it again. So I've given this music the name Dagmar Kiss. Okay, guys, ready? Let me know if you can hear it. So the light is starting to come through now. So, what did you think? I must say, I probably listened to that music 30, 40, 50 times and often cried, like often because it's like tragically beautiful. And when you connect it to the story that I'm trying to convey, it's even more tragically beautiful. So often when I've played it, like all the lights are out, everyone's asleep, and you sort of play it, I've sort of imagined over and over and over again the darkness of this fortress, and then in the darkness somebody rises, and in the in that darkness someone is now preparing to do something, and there's something brave and very very touching and very poignant. I mean, you often have it with sportsmen. You get up early to go and ride or go and race. You get up before the sun comes up, and it's just you know, there's loneliness there, but there's courage as well. And the fact that it's so cold and you're getting up, you know, you are warm, you've got fire in your belly, but outside it's cold, the wind's blowing, the teeth of winter are sort of, you know, out there, and then you go and face the world, you go and face the day. And so that's really what that moment is all about. And so it's a singular moment in the story that is just very simple, but also very epic. And also the tones you get from that piece of music speak to the whole story. You know, it's very, very, very sad. It's also very beautiful, and it's also very powerful, right? And yeah, so if you if you're ready to go to sleep later tonight, come back and turn on this video and play that track back, assuming it's still there. I might need to get rid of it because of some copyright issue. So it may not be there for much longer, but I'll try and find a way to, I think I may put it on SoundCloud or something, but try and listen to it when you are like in bed and it's completely dark, and see what a impact it has on you. You need to imagine the scene that I've just told you about to get the full effect of it. So it is pretty powerful. Well, Living in the Pine says, I did cry listening to it. I'm dealing with a fresh breakup and it sort of gutted me. Yeah. So I must say, I find it so heartrending. It's beautiful, it's tragic, and it tears at the soul, doesn't it? So yeah, we're thinking about you. Okay, so I'm going to play another little piece of music, not as long, just to give you a sense of, again, the music of this narrative. So this one is called Battle. So I think one of the words I was looking for earlier is archetypal. So I'm trying to cut to some of the archetypal aspects of a person, of the human story. Archetypes of good and evil, archetypes of light and dark, archetypes of courage and cowardice, archetypes of you know, power and weakness, and beauty and ugliness, and you know, the archetypes of our common human story. Let's do another one. Ancient memories.
Yakamaya maya kaya memo. Yakamaya maya kaya memo. Yakamaya maya kaya memo.
So I'm not quite sure what they call that. It's also a word I know, I just can't think of at the moment, but you hear it in some of the music from Gladiator as well. It's where there's singing, but it's not really in any particular language. And it tends to evoke our common humanity. It tends to evoke kind of like a tribal sense of ourselves, but not a particular tribe, just a general tribe. Do you guys know the name for that kind of singing? This is something else I like the sound of, but you'll probably recognize the music. But it's the vibe that I'm sort of going for, of a community that exists in this remote part in the ice. Anyone recognize that? That's also music that can occasionally reduce me to tears. It's so beautiful. Yeah. That music comes from the movie Witness, where I think it's called, the actual title track of that is Building the Barn. It's really quite beautiful. Good quote there, Gloria. Okay, so I'll play you one more, and then we'll read one more chapter, and then we'll call it a day. This is end credits. So if this was made into a movie, then the idea would be that that end part that you heard there, that would be what you would hear as you sort of walked out the cinema. So you would walk out with this ringing in your ears of this sort of kind of tribal thing that's going on. And so it's quite a triumphant way that you would leave the cinema, even though what you've just kind of witnessed in terms of the story is pretty traumatic. But it's basically, well, despite the trauma, despite the trials, life goes on after the end of the world. And that is the thing to celebrate. That if you're still alive, well, life goes on. No matter what you've been through, if you're still alive, life goes on, and that's something, isn't it? Right? So listen to the sentiment, the spirit in this music. Now, if you remember Star Wars, the Empire, Return of the Jedi, it sort of ends with the rebels having a kind of a party, is it, with the Ewoks, and there's that sort of clanging celebration sound similar to that you just heard, kind of similar. Okay, shall I read to you guys another chapter? Or are you going to keep snoring? Okay. Okay, so let's do chapter 4, and then that's going to be it from me. Okay. So bear in mind, and you might say, I'm trying too hard, or I know what you're trying to do, but you haven't succeeded. But a lot of thought went into every word choice, every little anecdote, every little scenario. A lot of thought went into it. Chapter 4, First Night. I saw a water lily once when I was a small boy, and the river Ware still flowed. It was dark, and the chill waters, the last waters of the world's springtime, were like a mirror. In its silver were reflected all the leaning trees. From the riverbank they stretched their fine black fingers into the twilight, as though trying to escape winter's white teeth, inching through the soils, white teeth already nibbling at their black toes. All was black and silver even then. And then, as I was walking a rough path through a still dead wood, I saw a white star floating in Mercury. It is a strange thing, isn't it? A lily. Most of them float on the surface of water. The flowers rise out of the water, some open during the day, others at night. My master told me that. I used to ask him many times about flowers, how I longed to see them, or any green thing. He told me then, as we walked with a hunting party through dead woods, about a blue water lily. It's an African flower. It opens in the morning, he said, his own white hands unfurling in front of swinging grey fur. And then the blue petals sink beneath the water at dusk. But Richard, the white lily is different to the blue lily. I look into his silver eyes. The white lily, he smiled, opens at night and closes in the morning. We walked on and he spoke about the Egyptians and how they carved the pillars of their temples in the shapes of lilies or lotus flowers. Even their kings were buried with them, he said. Sometimes in old age I sit and listen again to some of his wonderful words. It is strange to be in this place so cold, so bleak, and then to hear those fibers of his disembodied voice playing on such things as empires and deserts, and a time that was once warm and rich and busy with the tides of men and nature. Romans, he tells me, he tells those frosted walls, believed if you crushed the flour and made vinegar of it and drank of it for 10 days, a boy could be made into a eunuch. Why would anyone want to do that? But then I think, living as we do in a world without women and children, a world of war, a world of ice and occasional wicks of flame, genitals are a curse, a reminder of the collective insult we are to our species. He talks about the Syrian terracotta plague, using the lily as a motif for a goddess of fertility, Asherah. My thoughts drift from one master to the next, from frozen stone walls through woods and waters. My fur boots snap on twigs, while his, whether walking on leaves or shingle or sharp ice, do little more than rustle. I see him in the flame, silver and strange. I hear Master Ulysses talking about a 9th century ivory panel in his room. Yes, I have seen it. It depicts the most ancient Egyptian deity, Horus, sitting on a lotus blossom. His silver voice titivates my ear like honey on a tongue. Horus was their god of vengeance, he whispers, god of the sky, god of protection and war. Its head was a falcon, a creature that always haunted the Egyptian sky. It seemed to rule the heavens. And men wanted to be like that. Kings wanted the same immutable intransience, the same infinite capacity to life. The woods part and we climb through the deep drifts of snow. A wolf howls. Nearby another answers. We stop. Again Ulysses whispers in my ear. It was always there, flying over the sands of time, watching the pyramids rise in the midst of vast green fields and a river that was like gold shining under the African sun. But his mouth is nowhere near my ear. His voice is in my mind like a splinter piercing skin. He points to the sky. A golden eagle, Vega, sweeps above us. It is difficult not to envy the bird the enormous freedoms bequeathed by flight. Untrapped by snow, mud, or random topography, Vega can move effortlessly to where the pickings are best. Even better, from those footless halls, Vega can wheel across the vistas, seeing the bad weather at its source, feeling it first in his fingers before any other creature, even before the wisest and oldest trees. My master unfolds his bow, and so do other men. There are stags here. Some are entering the woods and some are leaving. Both men and wolves are after the same animal. We look up to the eagle. We can't see the stag, but we know Vega can. Its slow circles tighten. So what I was trying to convey thus far in this chapter is this idea of someone thinking about a flower. Like, I wish I could just see a flower, because his entire life he's just seen snow and death and soil, and is living in a world where flowers no longer exist, right? And then a whole history lesson around flowers, taking you all the way back to the Egyptians, right? And the idea with that is that you, in your life as the reader, maybe you will look at a flower in the context of someone who can never ever see a flower again, right? someone who's in a permanent winter situation. The other thing is this idea that in terms of your food, you are competing in this world against animals for food, right? When last did we have that problem? Like when last did human beings need to compete against animals for the food that we wanted? That's not something we're used to doing, right? And that again just confirms the weakness, the vulnerability of and the unraveling of the human species down to its last few people. Yeah, so that is exactly it. So what I'm trying to do here is combine a story about itself with, but also about the human story. So it involves some flourishes of history. It involves some stark moments in the mythos of the story, but that evokes a completely different history, right? And again, what it's trying to do is dislocate you to say, what is your reality and what are you doing with it, right? And you might say, I see that's what you're trying to do. I don't know if you're succeeding, but that is what I'm trying to do. So then he says, so can you see they're using an eagle to help them hunt? They're using an eagle for hunting purposes or for food purposes. He says, in my dreams, I walk in his woods and in mine. He talks of long ago times as though he was there himself. I've seen his collections. I've listened, hypnotized to his recollections. On the way back from the hunt, the elf hauls an enormous stag over his shoulder. It drips a faint bloodline alongside faint footprints in the snow. Now, that sentence isn't there for nothing. It's meant to symbolize footprints in the snow, and there's a bloodline that goes along with it. And at a certain point, obviously, it stops. The blood stops flowing. The footsteps in the snow also stop, right? It's meant to reach into your subconsciousness. Despite the still warm, oozing burden on his shoulders, he walks unwinded. He talks about a painting. My master tells me he keeps a painting of water lilies in his room, one of many treasures by a French painter. Any idea what that's about? So part of this unraveling of the human species also involves a remembering of who we are. It's like, because we are about to die, let's remember who we were. Let's remember all of who we were. Let's remember our art, our history, our geography, right? Anyone know who this French painter is of water lilies? That's it. Well done. Well done. Well done. Okay. So in this situation, bear in mind, they don't have television, they don't have internet, they don't have phones, they don't have movies, they don't have magazines, they don't really even have books because books need to be burned for fuel. It's just something like, wow, have you got a painting of water lilies? I would love to see that, right? It's like, can you imagine that? Like, you don't have any media to consume. All you see is white all around you, right? Almost like Brian Koberger's White Noise or White Snow. And someone telling you that they've got a picture of a water lily is like, please, can I please see that water lily? I need to see some color, please. And so he says, I'd very much like to see it, sire, but I realize the impropriety of this. But his privacy and authority is secondary to my decaying memories, my dying identity. Why do you want to see a painting you have never seen, he asks me. Because I saw a lily once, my lord, I'd like to see it again. Have you ever seen a lily, sire? Yes, in the south. Later, when I ask about it, he smiles and takes me into the tower to his quarters. It is a large chamber filled with treasures. My master tells me about the artist, Monet, a man famous for his paintings of water lilies. I stare at the painting for a long time. Everything is different. It has a nuclear sweetness to it that hardly seems real. The light is warm, the sky is blue. It looks like heaven. It doesn't look like any earthly place, but the lilies are real. I recognize their smooth edges. I recognize their roundedness, their exquisite curved pointedness. There is such an abundance of them in Monet's paintings. I see they could even be weeds. They are hardy and tender plants, he says softly. Each has 8 petals. The flowers are either pink, yellow, or blue. Or white, I say. Yes, that's right. For a long time I stared at it. It stirs so many feelings in me, feelings of loss, feelings of recognition, feelings of connection and disconnection, feelings of reality and unreality. Do you know, Richard, he painted the same scene over and over. To what purpose, I ask? To capture the changing of the light and the passing of seasons. He did it to know a place and to know a thing in all its dimensions. Why? Because that's how we know who we are and where we belong. Many of us come to his room to look at his paintings. It reminds us of what the world was like. It reminds me that there was once such a thing as summer, and the water lily I saw once when I was just a boy. I saw a water lily once. It is the most beautiful thing I ever saw. It haunted my dreams. Its white ghost came to me in every dark place. And now a lily sleeps in my bed. Like the moon and the sun, like the tides, she rises. So what I'm trying to do through that whole chapter is tell a really poignant story about someone who's in his entire life is kind of seen one flower or through many decades. Bear in mind, he's an old man at this point. It's been like 50 years, 60 years since he's last seen a flower, like a real flower. And this entire chapter is in a way a subtle way to acknowledge that he is infatuated with this inappropriately young, beautiful woman lying in his bed, right? And it's trying to again flesh out this idea of how vulnerable the natural earth is and life is. And so it's comparing this visitor to a flower that has been lost in his life, and now there's a flower in his bed, and it's this feeling almost of, is she in danger? Is she going to survive? Is she going to last? And so that's what I'm trying to do. Whether I succeed in that is up to you to decide. But that's the way that I've tried to do it. Thanks a lot, Jody. I appreciate that. If one person likes what I've done, then I feel like I've succeeded. Terry says, I've seen water lilies at the Art Institute in Chicago. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever seen a water lily, it often evokes perfection, and that's why I think the Inca lily is not the Inca lily, the lilies that some of the ancients believe in, the lotus flower in India. It seems to be perfect, right? It does seem to be perfect. Okay, Timmy, can I put you down? Okay. I kind of feel like, even though I said I would only read one more chapter, I kind of feel like reading one more. Would you guys like to hear another chapter? Thanks, Sharon. So before you guys answer, I'm going to see if I can find a little bit more music and see what you guys think of it. So these are some other images that I have collected. That's Lindisfarne Castle. Okay. Okay, so let's go to chapter 5, 12th night. I watch her in the dark. She's like water, fragile, floating, lost, vulnerable. She lives, she breathes. Her hair is shiny soil and black forest, rich, bottomless, extant. She radiates a black fire even when she sleeps, and she has slept 11 more days and nights. Why has my master left her in my custody? I'm a scrivener, not a bodyguard. I may be old, one of the oldest shits here, but I still have lead in my pencil. I'm a scrivener, not a babysitter. She makes a soft sound, the coo of a dove. What cloudless climes and starry skies made her commence? What happened to her kin, her Teutonic companions? What strength, what luck is behind such sweet survival? For if she's not a crasher, then she has eluded not just a multitude of wolves, but other monsters too. Poisonous clouds, murderous vagabonds, firestorms, drones, worst of all, the fangs of bitter cold that have their teeth in this world. But I don't want to think about the cold. I'd rather slit my throat. I don't want to think about her either. She quickens me. I find myself rising and restless despite the Arctic air. There's a deep sigh in her breathing. Then her breathing stops. I lean forward. No, the deep breathing resumes. I sit by the flame of my candle, sharpening pencils. The fire is dying and I've no more wood. I wonder where Jasper is and where the fuck is Udak. With a small rusted blade, I sharpen all my pencils. Then I start again, sanding the nibs into perfect points. These are my arrows. A beetle arrives in the night. Its silver body hovers silently over her sleeping form. A thin blue plasma erupts over its silver thorax, throwing a blue glow over my manuscripts. 1, 2, 5 towers of paper piled floor to ceiling. Then it departs. Soon afterwards, Ulysses' mother appears at my door. I am still sharpening my pencils. I am staring into the candle flame. I hear her voice. We must awake before it's too late, I hear her say. But when I look at the door, she's gone, and those words seem stolen from some other source. I stand, pulling a blanket over my shoulders. I shuffle to the door. So what that is all about is he's in a way losing track of reality. He can't quite tell what's real and what's imagined. He hears a voice, he turns, he doesn't see anyone, then he's not sure if he really heard it after all. And those words are either simple words like we need to wake up before it's too late in the morning, or maybe it means something far more profound. All of us need to wake up before we beyond the point of no return. Or it just means in your life, you need to wake up, right? You need to see what's happening. So I'm playing with that sort of symbolism. I stand, so he wants to make sure, was someone there? Did he imagine it? I stand, putting a blanket over my shoulders. Have you ever been that cold that you can't get out of bed and go to the kitchen? You actually cover yourself in a blanket from your bed and you walk through your home. Have you ever been that cold? I shuffle to the door. Cold drafts shoot needles through the skin and bone as I move. I cast off the blanket and run along the corridor, but she's not there. I run to the other end, but she isn't there either. There's no sound except the wind and the distant squabbling of tawny owls. In the gloom beside the door, I find a note. It is a grainy gray in the thick darkness. I move back to my chair and hold it up to the candle. When I'm done reading, I stuff it into a fold in my chest fur. I stare blankly at a long hole diced through the wall, sliced through the wall. So that's obviously the, in castles you get those windows that are very narrow so that arrows can't come through there. You can imagine that it's quite cold in a room that, for a window, actually allows the air from the outside to come in. So that's also what makes it so cold. So you have fire in a fireplace, well, that's one thing, and a warm bed, but cold drafts coming in and out. Too late for what? Falling snow, firestorms, armies of men coming and going, sharpened pencils, scribbles on paper. How many years have I sat here looking through this window, and now the window stares at me? It asks what windows and doors remain unlocked in my heart. I'm an old man now, and all my entrances and exits are collapsed or ruined or sealed with rust. And yet such things as this letter and this young girl are charged to my account. I feel a prick against my cheek. A beetle on my shoulder pokes me. She's awake, Richard. Beep. And thirsty. Beep. Ulysses is the first voice. Darcy is the second. When I stand, the beetle lifts. Its blue light guides me to a bed. I warm a pot of water over some dying coals. Then I pour the broth into a wooden mug. In the dark, I see the whites of her eyes. I hand her the steaming honey tea. Her delicate white fingers take the mug. She drinks half of it and then passes out. Does such an exquisite creature stand a chance in the cesspool of slaughter? Does she know she has walked into a war, an escalating fratricide? Does beauty stand any chance against the raw vicissitudes of cruel men and cruel nature? Surely her own weapon, that thing that compels men, also creates a great danger to herself. Her subterranean power becomes the very thing that destroys her. I should know. Every blessing must live out its seasons as a curse. Just my years of writing have destroyed my eyes, my back, and what once gave me friends, and prestige, and 4 square meals now ushers in every miserable, overwrought hour and every sleepless night. These are my arrows. How far will they shoot through time? Will they reach their target, or will they fly through oblivion and drag me into it? Wait, is it my imagination, or is there something potent behind her delicate smallness? Something quick and cat-like, something enterprising, like the elf, only more demure, more obviously female. Her face is a winter forest waiting for the spring, waiting for the sun, waiting for a chance to sing. Her face is perfect, like porcelain, like white rock in the rain. Although she is exhausted, I sense a vigor hibernating in her. It is this locked-up vitality that beats back death, as a candle beats at the cold and dark. Through the window, I watch them skinning the wolves. I see it clear as day, though I cannot be sure whether I am dreaming or not. Sometimes I am, but when I pinch myself on this occasion, I am not. Sometimes, even when I pinch myself, the nightmare swims on. There is no waking from its layers. I watch them carving up their corpses. Wheelbarrows move to and fro, plodding and bumping through knee-deep drifts. I chew on a fingernail. Every time I look at her, I'm startled. Such beauty and uncontaminated youth are indeed rare in these times. I believe she is the most extraordinary creature I've ever seen. I glance over to my papers, 5 tattered grey towers piled almost to the ceiling. Some piles are bound with string, others with shoelaces. So that is to again convey the absolute poverty that they're living in, that they tie papers together with shoelaces. It's my life's work, but I would burn it all just to be with her. For these are the finitudes of life, and in these moments one sees how what one thought to be one's own passions lay to waste an entire life force. Did my life, I wonder, ever blossom as assertively as hers? Did I ever walk this world and turn to find death's shadow cowering under me? Or has mine always been an anxious, over-examined life, a cold life, a solitary walk? I think there needs to be an apostrophe there. In her, I see life having a chance to exalt in itself, life having a chance to spread its wings and fly, to thrill and enthrall. I look at the enormous white blanket made of the skin of a polar bear, rising and falling over her. The same white blanket traps a third of the planet under its icy grip. The ice has solidified far beyond the Arctic, joining the continents and islands like this in a supercontinent of alabaster. Across these bridges, wolves and bears, finding man absent from virtually every scene, quickly expanded their ranges and soon made their way here. In time, this girl will ask me for a Bible. In time, she will ask for a bow. In a far-flung place of rough warriors and almost no women, and certainly none young, and maybe one other beautiful, how will she endure the risk of rape? Men are men, brutes are brutes. So this was done intentionally as well, is to end the chapter on a cliffhanger. Like, is this guy, what is this guy going to do? Is this guy a danger to her? And it's also to illustrate the very real peril she finds herself in. And so do you want to kind of read the next chapter kind of thing? I'm not going to read the next chapter. My voice is going, but the next chapter is chapter 6, The Reawakening. So you may notice that I've tried to write this book in a slightly different language, almost like the language of The Hobbit, in the sense that it's a language of its own, within its own narrative, right? Within its own narrative universe. So I've tried to write about these very serious themes in a poetic way. That's kind of done intentionally, and it's not really that easy to do. It's easy to do when you're in that, when you're immersed in that mythos. It's easy to do that, but it's very hard to. If you say to me now, okay, do you mind writing just like one additional chapter? Do you mind just like writing a postscript chapter? I wouldn't be able to do it because you've got to be immersed in that to feel it, right? For it to resonate and to come out in a way that's kind of intuitive, if I can put it that way. And if you're not immersed in it, you can't just pitch up and tell the story. Thanks a lot, Mel. Thank you. I wrote it at a very young age, but then I rewrote it. So I was a better writer when I reimagined it, put it that way. Okay, so I'm going to play you guys a final bit of music. Do you want me to play 2? I actually thought I'd downloaded more images, but maybe next time. Okay, this piece of music is called Ride. Okay, I'm not going to play that. I'm going to play instead this. This is called Triumph. Okay, so I hope you found this meaningful. This is really something that no matter when I dip my toe into it, I feel very emotional. It obviously, for me, is such an authentic story that whenever I brush with it, it very quickly overwhelms me, to be quite honest. I feel very emotional. I feel tearful. I feel inspired. I feel just a rush of feeling. And that's really what I was trying to do. This story is meant to be epic. It's meant to be immersive. It's meant to be a separate universe. It's meant to be something where it's almost like you get onto a roller coaster. When you get off, although you've been exhilarated, you completely exhausted, you completely wrung out. And so you can imagine how much thinking and feeling it took to actually create this narrative, because being exposed to it does that to you. Well, in order to put it together, you had to find all of these threads and distill them. And so, it definitely comes from a very, very deep place. Keep weaving. Estelle says, I missed this because of sleeping. How mundane. Thanks, Estelle. Yeah, well, it's almost 7 o'clock in the morning here in South Africa. Yeah, so where I am right now is I would really like to design a new book cover, and I would really like to try and begin the process of I don't know, trying to first of all republishing it in a way that does justice to it. And sometimes I think the book itself is perfect the way it is. It doesn't need anything to be changed, other than the book cover. I don't really think the book cover is nearly as good as it could be or should be. And then other times I think maybe the book needs a new title. Maybe the characters need different names, but the content I'm kind of pretty happy with. I thought I actually had some additional images that I could share with you. Oh yeah, they are. I know these aren't them. So this was a previous book cover that I tried, and as you can see, it doesn't quite do the job. I thought I had a couple of others here. No, that's not quite what I'm looking for. Just want to see if I've got another. Is it this? Okay. So you guys want me to do a follow-up to this where I can read a couple of more chapters? What I really want to show you is some of the artwork that I'd previously looked at, and some of the, do I have it as a draft email, I wonder? Oh, here it is. Okay. So these are some of the, here's some additional photos and images that is associated with the story. Can you guys see that? So this is the world that I'm trying to create, right? And in fact, there aren't really trees. A lot of the trees don't exist anymore. So this wouldn't necessarily be accurate. You'd see wolves, dead trees, maybe. Very, very few living forests. don't laugh, but this is kind of how I saw the main character. A very, as I say, it's kind of all the buttons are turned up. He's got silver hair. He kind of looks like an elf. He kind of looks like Legolas. His sword is longer than you'd expect, and there's something magical about him. He doesn't seem to feel the cold. He seems to have this weird knowledge of history going. He's got this incredible memory as well, and he's the central character. And obviously, I looked at quite a few different versions and different, of archers and how to think about them and how to describe them. And things like drones as well. What do they look like? How do they operate? How does one describe them? But in terms of a book cover, I wanted something as epic as Star Wars. Now, how do you render wolves and ice in a Star Wars sort of format? How do you do that? I mean, compare that to that. It kind of looks a bit dinky, right? Oh, sorry, not dinky, hinky. And then Dagmar, what does she look like? And I tended to think a bit of this character in Rogue One, but I think Anne Hathaway, a young Anne Hathaway, the Anne Hathaway in The Devil Wears Prada. That's kind of the person I've got in my mind, right? Anyway, so I was looking at all of this sort of artwork for someone wearing a cloak and, conveying what I'm trying to convey. This is from Lord of the Rings. And I do think Legolas is one of the closest to the ideas I have of the central character. Well, I've got so many images here. I don't know if we're going to get through all of them. Let's do it like this. So that's a picture of Legolas from behind. You can see his swords over there and hairstyle kind of going on. See, and so I was looking at things like boots. What kind of boots are these people wearing? Is it leather? Is it fur? If you're going to draw it, what is it going to look like? Is it going to look more like that? And so different characters need to wear different kinds of boots. Yeah, no, a young Keira Knightley as well. Yeah. So that's the kind of vibe I'm kind of going for, where there's snow and it's cold and the forests are sort of dead, right? And the idea with this character, this is Sephiroth from, I think it's Final Fantasy. The idea with a male character with silver hair or gray hair is that he is almost ageless. He could be young with long sort of platinum colored hair, or he could be in a weird way an old soul. But it's almost playing with that idea that he's not a blonde or a brunette or a redhead or a whatever. He's is somewhere in between those realities. Is like the new man, if I can put it that. He's like the new human, right? And there's something transcendental about him. And so that was something else in terms of the artwork when you were trying to get someone to sketch the scene. Where does the arrow fit in? Does the arrow come through some of those slats? So you had to actually go and look at it and study it. And so that's kind of what I think about when I think about Dagmar. That's kind of the idea I have in my mind. And although it's Anne Hathaway and it's recognizably Anne Hathaway, can you see that there's something beautifully artistic about it? Do you agree with that? So there you get another sense of what that would look like. And the reason I've got Batman here is what does a cape look like in the wind? And he uses the cape. They use capes like for blankets. So if they are not on their horses, or if they sitting down on the fortress, then they literally wrap the cape around themselves. And the idea was, what does the cape look like in the wind? So one of the characters that is introduced in the story is a woman named Columbia, and I literally am thinking about the Columbia in Columbia Pictures. I'm thinking about this almost this goddess-like person who comes from America, and she owns a Maine Coon's cat, and this cat is like in a way a protector, but also hunts animals and provides them with food. And so this cat is also part of the cast of characters. And so it's not only when people die in the story that's touching, but also when animals die, you develop a relationship with these animals and you feel their loss, right? And so you've got to, one of the hardest things for me to visualize and to put into practice is I live in a place where we don't really get snow. I live in a place where, in winter, you don't really have this sort of thing. I experienced it a little bit when I lived in South Korea, when the lakes would freeze and you'd walk over them. But it's another thing to remember places like that and to write about being in ice and the realities of that. And it's extreme cold when you're not really familiar with it. So I needed to watch movies about very cold conditions, documentaries, study up on it, look at what animals can thrive in very cold conditions. Wolves are one of them, and what it looks, feels, and sounds like. And I also had to study up on the animal behavior of wolves. What is their story? How do they survive? What are their strategies? How do wolves interact with other wolves? Right? Isn't that a beautiful picture? So if there's a bit of a sense of a fairy tale quality, that you're creating a world that is very hyper real, but also there's something mystical about it, something magical about it. Well, that's also done intentionally. So there are things like capes, there's bows and arrows, there's swords, and then part of the charm of this type of fantasy epic is that I think it's the same reason why people are drawn to things like Game of Thrones, and they're drawn to The Last Kingdom, is when death is so visceral and real and part of everyday life, it kind of makes love and sexuality so much more raw and so much more sweet in a way, right? When you leave someone and there's a very good chance you're not going to come home, then that last kiss does mean a lot. That last embrace does mean a lot. Coming back into that embrace means so much as well, right? And so you look at some of the modern versions of heroic women, and obviously this wouldn't work in an ice age situation. She'd get very cold, but you do want to look at the some of the ideas used here. So there's trying to combine a little bit of the rock and stone and wood of the bows and arrows with a small amount of advanced technology. And what would that look like? So there are no monsters in this story. There are no dinosaurs or anything like this. I guess the only monster is the weather. The weather's a monster, and the elements to some extent. So there's a really nice example of the kind of uniform or the kind of dress that predates Western dress. That's the kind of thing that Dagmar might wear, right? And so that's really the canvas, the backdrop in which these characters move through. It's gray, it's white, it's stark. It's in a way static, although the ice in other places is moving across the landscape. You wouldn't really see grass like this. Anywhere that's level would be pretty much permanently covered with snow or ice. So as I say, one of the characters is named Columbia, and she's named after this particular icon, and she's meant to be representative of America, and so she comes into this story as an American, a sort of a prominent woman who's kind of a leader in a way, and so she joins the whole story at some point as well. Oh, Iceland, thanks for joining us. Cool. That's right. So again, what do these landscapes look like? What does a landscape that's just ice and rock look like? So this is something that was done for me, and as you can tell, it's terrible. So this guy was trying to. So he has a guy with a sword, and and this is supposed to be like a Batman-like cape, and this is an early rendering of it, and as you can see, it's terrible, right? It's terrible. It is a fairly rough draft, but not terribly good. And then that's kind of an improvement on it, and that is that's better, and it's kind of I think you can recognize a little bit of the Star Wars design in that. And although that's better, it's still not terribly good. But you kind of get an idea of what I was trying to do. I guess these are supposed to be drones. But I quite like this part with the wolf in the background. I quite like that. That's done quite well. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel. But you can see what I'm trying to do, and I just can't quite get what I want. That's a slightly better execution, but you can see there's some scans coming off these drones, but still not very good quality. So there you get quite a good idea of there's a spaceship going up, and in the middle of that you have this situation, bows and arrows. And then these are very tall walls of ice. This is the reality of an ice age. That's how tall these mountains of ice are, as tall as skyscrapers. So I do use the two concepts of black wolves and white wolves, the black house and the house of light, this idea of light and dark, good and evil. I do emphasize that purposefully in a very stark way. I think that's it. That is it. Okay, so I hope you guys found that enjoyable. I'm going to play out with a last piece of music, and we can maybe do this again, read a couple more chapters. What I want to leave you with is, let's just see if I can find it. Sorry, just give me a second. Okay, so if you guys want to buy Bloodline, so this is the first. So the original book. This book has been cut into 5 mini books, five parts. If you want to buy the first part, you can get it at this link, and it's available only as a Kindle version. It does have links to some audio and images, so you can go to that link. This is the current book cover. It's better than, I think it's better than this one, but it's still not the one that I want. So that's why I say I kind of need to get that done at some point. Here is the blurb. Two wolves battle for the fates of our race on the western seaboard. Anyway, that is that's kind of the thing. You can see it's got quite a high rating, 4.7 out of 5, but it's very, not many people have read it, so that's quite disappointing. So if you are interested, if you've enjoyed the content that we put up today, you might want to check out this book. If you read it and you enjoy it, please leave a review. And then there are obviously other books in this series. Just trying to see where they are. Just try Bloodline, Nick. There you can kind of get some of the others. There's Bloodline, Red Square, that's book 2. Bloodline, War of the Worlds. You can see terrible cover art, terrible cover. Not quite sure where the others are, but there are more. There are 5 books essentially in that series. There's so Bloodline, Red Square. For those interested, is that going to fit in? No, it doesn't. So that's the second one. That's the, which one is this one? Not actually sure. Book 3. But as you can see, the cover art is kind of terrible. Anyway, so if you are interested in reading along with me or whatever, then you can have a look at this book. I'm going to play out with where's that image now? With this image and some other music. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. Stephanie says, okay, so I have the first. Okay. Thanks a lot for being here, guys. Thanks for your interest. I hope you enjoy the music at the end. And yeah, if you've got any thoughts, feedback, let me know in the comments. Just want to see what music am I going to be playing here. Oh, it's this. So the music I'm going to play is from Brunnerville. It's actually on YouTube, so I'll put a link to that in the description. And this also conveys the type of vibe that I'm kind of getting at, right? You can also play this when you want to. It's really worth listening to. So I'm going to just put that on screen. If I can make it a bit smaller. Just put it over here. I don't know why this cheerleader's here. Anyway, are you guys ready? So this music also evokes the vibe of the whole Bloodline universe, right?